With so many wonderful / unexpected developments, and more subtle details and Easter eggs than you can shake a pair of lightsabers at in the first season of Ahsoka, there's a good chance you didn't catch absolutely everything this brilliant show had to offer. So I am Gareth from What Culture Star Wars, and here are 20 things you somehow missed in Ahsoka Season 1. Number 20, Death Troopers Rise. A set of night troopers find themselves being resurrected by the Great Mothers as Ahsoka Tano, Ezra Bridges, and Sabine Wren attempt to reach the blue-skinned menace known as Thrawn in the finale episode. In other words, zombie stormtroopers finally arrived in live-action Star Wars, baby. And said unsettling night troopers actually felt like a pretty direct nod to Joe Schreiber's 2009 Death Trooper novel, with that book focusing on a bunch of zombie stormtroopers coming back from the dead due to an awful disease to cause chaos. And while we're talking about stormtroopers, I want to know what you think is the coolest stormtrooper of all time. Let me know in the comment section right down below. Number 19, A Long Time Ago. The first ever words to pop up on screen in a Star Wars feature were, of course, the fascinating "a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away." But at no point were those words ever uttered in the universe itself on screen. Until now, as Ahsoka and the old architect droid Huyang chat on their way to Peridia inside of a Purgil, as you do, the former recalled the history of the galaxy stories the latter used to tell the younglings when they were training. And after first turning down the offer of hearing one of these old stories, Ahsoka eventually requests a tale from her companion. It's here when Huyang gets things started with that all too familiar opening line, simultaneously providing fans with an awesome little nod to the words that started it all, and possibly suggesting that Huyang could actually be the one recalling the entire Star Wars story chapter of the history of the galaxy years in the future to some mesmerized youngsters. Yep, just think that one over. Number 18, a games console pops up in hospital. It simply wouldn't be Star Wars if there wasn't a retro or other real-world gadget hiding in plain sight at some stage. And that's exactly what went down during the moment a recently stabbed Sabine Wren extracted vital information from a decapitated droid's head within a hospital on Lothal in Ahsoka. In order to recover the memory of the sliced-up droid, the Mandalorian uses a retro-looking piece of kit to pump just the right amount of power into it, before it or Huyang explodes. But when looking closely at this particular tool, one eagle-eyed Reddit user actually noticed that the prop department had opted to dust off an old Galaxy Invader handheld video game from the 80s for the stressful hospital bed extraction. Number 17, the reference to Vader's fight with his son. Before Ahsoka Tano clashes with her old master in the World Between Worlds during Part 5 Shadow Warrior, Snips tells Anakin Skywalker that she will not fight him. The Star Wars icon replies by letting his Padawan know that he's heard that before. And he's not lying, his own flesh and blood Luke Skywalker said something similar, as the two dueled in front of Emperor Palpatine on the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi. That also wasn't the only interesting and easily missed moment during this epic collision. Number 16, Ahsoka is briefly seduced by the dark side. Not long after reliving some important Star Wars Clone Wars moments together, Skywalker shifts into Vader territory during his duel with Ahsoka, swinging his red lightsaber at his Padawan as his eyes turn yellow and red. This tends to happen whenever a Force user begins to give in to the anger and rage inside them. And in a blink and you'll miss it flicker, Tano's own eyes also briefly show a yellow and red glimpse of the dark side within as she threatens to use Vader's own lightsaber against him. Instead of allowing that anger to control her like Vader did though, Tano soon tosses the blade away and opts to not kill her master and walk away from the darker path he walked after the fall of Anakin. Number 15, a few unexpected Rebels cameos. While the likes of Ezra Bridges, Sabine Wren, Harrison Dula, Chopper, and even Grand Admiral Thrawn were all very much expected to show up at one point or another, there were actually some other little Rebels cameos that few honestly anticipated or even spotted. As the Star Wars planet of Lothal celebrates the anniversary of the day their world was liberated by the Spectres, none other than Governor Ryder Azadi and Senator Jai Kell were front and center. Both figures were present throughout the Rebels animated show, helping the likes of Ezra and co see off the Empire in the end. Kel ended up being played by a different actor for his live-action debut in episode 1, with Vinnie Thomas replacing the voice of Dante Basco. However, big and small screen star Clancy Brown actually reprised the Azadi role he magnificently brought to life in the animated series for Ahsoka. Number 14, a photo tribute to Kanan Jarrus. Despite sacrificing himself to save his beloved Hera and the rest of his pals in the Star Wars Rebels animated series, Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus did actually find a way to join the gang in Ahsoka. Most understandably failed to notice this tiniest of references to Ezra Bridges' master though, as it briefly went down when Hera and her son Jason boarded the Ghost to help Ahsoka, Sabine and Huyang early in episode 4. Really focus on the cockpit of the trusty rebel ship in this scene, and as noted by one fan on X, you'll soon realize that the Republic General actually keeps a photo of her Kanan, the father of her boy, with her on the Ghost. No, you're crying. Number 13, what Ahsoka's ship is named after. This latest live-action Star Wars tale saw the titular Force user and her youngling training pal Huyang piloting the T61974. Instead of simply throwing a bunch of random numbers at the wall and seeing which ones stuck, however, those digits were actually an entirely intentional tribute to the mind behind much of the Thrawn and Bridger hunting fun. In case you weren't aware, longtime Star Wars creator Dave Filoni's birthday is June 6, 1974. So when it came time to give Tano's T6 shuttle its registration number for its live-action debut, someone, or possibly even Filoni himself, clearly thought it would be funny to simply slap Dave's birthday in the script. Number 12, Ahsoka dusts off her fulcrum name. During episode 1 of Ahsoka, the New Republic got in touch with Tano and Huyang to let them know that there had been an incident. But it's the codename the voice on the other end of the line uses that is arguably more interesting than the reason for the unexpected transmission. Ahsoka is clearly still going by the fulcrum codename she used when secretly aiding the Rebel Alliance during the Galactic Civil War. None other than Tano's own master Anakin Skywalker first used the name for his subspace frequency in the Clone Wars, with Tano then going on to use it as a secret alias. Others would then go on to use said codename over the years too, such as Agent Callus in the Rebels animated series. After all these years, it's interesting to note that Tano is still going by the name that will forever be connected to her master and the age of the Empire. Number 11, a nod to the Emperor not actually being gone after all. In a delightful and subtle nod to the sequel madness that would ultimately grip this Star Wars universe a few years later in the timeline, Ezra and Sabine's reunion brought with it an unexpected and fascinating Emperor Palpatine reference. As Ren tries to catch Bridger up on the things he missed after being blasted into another galaxy, the latter asks his Mandalorian mate, "The Emperor died?" A throwaway "that's what people say" soon follows. A moment that could initially be viewed as little more than a nod to the events of The Rise of Skywalker. What you may not have realized, however, is that this comment also seemingly highlights the fact some rebels were clearly still struggling to fully believe the mind behind the Clone Wars was truly dead and gone even a few years after his death in Return of the Jedi. And they were right to be suspicious in the end, lol. Number 10, the Mortis Gods. The Mortis Gods were back once again during the closing stages of Ahsoka Season 1. These three powerful beings represented the light side in the daughter, the dark side in the son, and the balance of the Force in the father, making their Star Wars debut in the Clone Wars Season 3 Overlords episode. They were also depicted on a mural in Rebels during both the Wolves at the Door and a World Between Worlds episodes in Season 4. Now, in what feels like a hint at the Mortis Gods having a significant role to play in Ahsoka's story going forward, Balin's skull was seen standing on top of a cliff sculpted to look like the father pointing to a point in the distance. A statue of the son could also be seen nearby, however the statue that looks like it would have been of the daughter has been destroyed, perhaps reflecting the lack of light in the galaxy at this moment in time. Number 9, Morai Returns. When the daughter was on her deathbed during that aforementioned Clone Wars Mortis arc, the last of her power was ultimately passed onto a recently killed Ahsoka Tano in an attempt to bring her back to life. It worked too. Then in the years that followed that interaction with the Force-sensitive gods, a little bird began to appear in the likes of the Clone Wars, Rebels, and even the Mandalorian. This convor goes by the name of Morai, with some believing that it is actually the daughter in another form, watching over the likes of Tano, Anakin Skywalker, Skywalker and Ezra Bridges. And this convoy guardian of sorts once again swooped down to say a quick hello towards the end of the season finale. The look Ahsoka then gives her longtime friend suggests that she could perhaps see her presence on Peridea as a sign that this is exactly where she needs to be at this precise moment in time. Number 8. Zephyrhieroglyphs. As Grand Admiral Thrawn, Morgan Elsbeth, Shin Hati, and Baylan Skoll stand in front of the massive Nightsister fortress on Peridea in Part 6, Far, Far Away, the symbols on the walls around them seem somewhat familiar to some fans. During the Jedi Fallen Order video game, Order 66 survivor Cal Kestis ventures across the galaxy and eventually discovers an awful lot about the Zepho species that could wield the Force, aka Life Wind. He even finds the tomb of one Zepho ruler known as Kujet on Dathomir, the world the Nightsisters eventually settled on in the game. And during the aforementioned 6th episode in Ahsoka Season 1, those runes/hieroglyphs actually appear to contain a message that connects the Zepho to Peridea. According to ex-user @TommyJWall, when you translate the runes, which seem to be written in Ul-Katat, the ancient language of the Sith, to English, they actually read "Praise Kujet, ruler of all, may his reign last for Al," and then it cuts off. So it looks like this dark side using Zepho didn't just rule in one galaxy far, far away. Number 7. The Super Commandos make their live-action debut. The Part 5 Shadow Warrior Epic Clone Wars flashback actually brought with it the live-action debut of one of the coolest looking soldiers in the galaxy. Now, those who enjoyed the captivating events of Season 7 of the Clone Wars will likely remember those Mandalorian Super Commandos who swore loyalty to Maul during this unexpected return to Mandalore. Whereas those who didn't catch that series were likely just wondering who these awesome demon Boba Fetts were. These Death Watch members eventually got rid of the blue they'd once sported when being led by Pre Vizsla, swapping those colours for Maul's black and red after the Sith Lord killed their former leader, and even adding menacing horns on top of their Beskar helmets. These Shadow Collective soldiers fought during the Siege of Mandalore seen in that noted flashback in Ahsoka. And after only ever seeing Thanos slashing through these Maul loyalists in the animated Star Wars world, watching the fantastic Ariana Greenblatt take out a few Mandalorian Super Commandos in a live-action version of that iconic battle was surreal to say the least. Number 6. This isn't the first time we've heard that Nightsisters Creed. During the final episode of Ahsoka Season 1, Nightsister Morgan Elsbeth is presented with a rather disturbing gift. Said gift of shadows involves the Great Mothers reciting a spooky creed of sorts, scorching some markings onto her face, and asking Elsbeth things like, "Do you pledge yourself to the sisterhood, to the magics, to the old ways?" And as spotted by the brilliant folks at New Rockstars, these were actually the exact same words used by Mother Talzin during the 4th season of the Clone Wars series, when Asajj Ventress was officially baptized and turned into an official Nightsister. Number 5. The slightly different version of the Rebels ending. The animated Rebels series ends with Ahsoka Tano arriving on her T6 ship to pick up a Sabine Wren who had just been admiring the mural she'd painted of the Spectre clan on Lothal. The two then look to be heading off to find Ezra Bridges. And those who perhaps haven't ever enjoyed the adventures of this rebel cell on the small screen possibly didn't spot what initially looked to be a live-action reenactment of that show's ending towards the end of episode 2. However, while the scene begins in a similar way to the one seen in the animated series, with Sabine checking out the artwork, things then unexpectedly change. Instead of Ahsoka the White showing up with her staff at this moment, Wren's master is in her grey attire, and even comments on Sabine's new haircut. Even Huyang stops by for a quick chat, suggesting that either Filoni and the gang have opted to completely retcon that Rebels moment, or that specific scene is perhaps still yet to happen at this point in the timeline. Number 4. Do or do not. Master Yoda's wise words of "do or do not, there is no try" to Luke Skywalker on Dagobah are an all-timer of a knowledge bomb. And in response to Ahsoka asking her Padawan Sabine Wren whether she's been keeping up with her training when they reunite on Peridea, the Mandalorian initially replies by saying how she tries. She then quickly corrects herself after clocking her master's reaction, noting, "I do." Now sure, it could just be a sweet callback to Yoda's The Empire Strikes Back one-liner, but it's not outside the realm of possibility that the little green legend could have passed this knowledge onto a young Tano at some point in her Jedi training too, and now she's just passing on that knowledge. Number 3. Ezra Bridges sticks to what he knows. Throughout the Rebels animated show, Jedi Padawan Ezra Bridges didn't half love disguising himself as an Imperial soldier in order to complete a mission. And in a wonderful but perhaps overlooked nod to that tried and tested tactic, the long-lost Rebel only went and did that very thing once again during his eventual return home. In typical Ezra fashion, the quick-thinking lad impersonated a fallen trooper on a comlink as the Chimera left Peridia before dragging said stormtrooper away. Fast forward to the end of the finale, and Bridger had managed to escape the Star Destroyer and reunite with Harrison Dula and Chopper, doing it all whilst in a trusty stormtrooper disguise. Never change, Bridger. Number 2, Ahsoka can use Force Echo. In the wake of Sabine Wren being impaled by a lightsaber during the first episode of the season, Ahsoka Tano pays a visit to her Padawan's home on Lothal. And it's here when the powerful Force user shows off a special ability that fans had never actually seen her use on screen before this show arrived on Disney+. As Tano wanders around the location, the sounds of Ren and Shin Hati's lightsabers clashing can be heard, showing how the titular figure was experiencing the duel and gathering vital information about the event despite not being present when it occurred. This particular ability has many names: Psychometry, Force Echo, and Sense Echo, and has been used by everyone from Master Quinlan Vos to Cal Kestis to Rey. And Tano now being able to call on this ability highlights just how much Ahsoka has grown as she continues to learn the ways of the Force. Number 1, the first live-action Star Wars TV show with an opening crawl. Whereas the likes of The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Andor have never opted for the classic opening crawl way of starting a brand new story in this galaxy far, far away, Ahsoka decided to put a new spin on the descending text introduction. On top of being the first ever opening crawl in live-action Star Wars TV history, the yellow text is swapped out for a more unnerving red. John Williams' legendary theme is nowhere to be found, and even the way the text falls isn't quite the same as those Skywalker Saga crawls. That rhymes, and I did not mean it. In a way, it's almost like Filoni and co have both paid tribute to what came before them, whilst also kickstarting a bold new era for the franchise, with something as simple as the reintroducing of a few informative words falling down a screen. And that's our list of any other things that people somehow missed in Ahsoka Season 1. Well, you let us know all about them in the comments section right down below, and don't forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're down there. I've been Gareth from What Culture Star Wars. May the Force be with you, as always. Cheers for watching today, guys and gals, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Bye-bye!